What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Dr. Joey Munoz Show, where we talk about all things health and fitness. I'm your host, Dr. Joey. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day so far. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about cutting versus bulking. Which should you do and why? I'm going to be giving you guys some specific considerations to determine whether you should choose to cut or choose to bulk. And I'm going to give you guys some specific tips on how to make each of those phases pretty successful. So hopefully that's exactly what you're looking for when you read the title of this episode. Before we get into it though, I do want to take a second to let you know that we have officially brought back our 21-day Shred the New Year challenge. So you can register for that now, and we're starting on January 6th. Check me out. You probably have some New Year's resolutions around losing some body fat, building some muscle, getting healthy, getting in shape. And my team and I really want to help you get that process started on the right foot, right? This may probably not be the first time you've had a New Year's resolution around improving health and fitness. And we know how important it is to start off on the right foot, build momentum throughout January so you don't burn out a couple of months in. It's also really important that you have a sustainable plan, which is the stuff that I talk about here all the time. And my team and I want to help you do just that. And you might be thinking, like, what can I do in 21 days? Well, the truth is you're not going to look like Superman or Superwoman in just 21 days, or I should say Wonder Woman, not Superwoman, right? You're not going to see amazing, crazy results in just 21 days. But here is what you can expect. You can definitely lose about 5 to 10 pounds of body fat, for sure. You can start to build confidence and feel better with your plan and build momentum, right? And you can start to develop some really healthy habits, which is what we focus on, building habits around nutrition, training, and lifestyle that are going to set you up for success throughout the rest of 2025 to make sure that you actually hit your health and fitness goals this year, okay? If you join us, here's what you get. You get an evidence-based nutrition and training plan, so we've got you covered on the nutrition side. And on the training side, I won't go super in depth on that because you can go into our website and read more details, but we'll give you 3-day per week or 4-day per week workout plans with dumbbells or barbells, or you could do those body weights. So pretty simple. You could do it anywhere. We're going to give you technique feedback as well. So we check out training videos from our clients to make sure they're training correctly and they have good technique. On the nutrition side, we'll give you calorie and macronutrient recommendations. We'll also give you meal prep ideas. We'll give you access to all of our educational guides. You get a ton of support, okay? And then we have coaching calls every week, so you can hop on a call with us, ask questions, get support. You get access to our community, so there's a ton of coaching and support as well, because we know that it's not just about the plan, it's also about getting support, staying accountable, staying motivated, all right? And by the way, if you're like, I don't know if this is for me, we have a full money back guarantee, guys. There is no risk for joining this. If you join us for the 21 days, you go through the plan, and you hate it by the end of the 21 days, which we're confident you won't hate, which is why we're doing this, we'll give you your money back. No questions asked. Okay? So again, if you join and you don't like it, no risk. We'll just give you your money back. No worries, because the last thing we want to do is sell you something that you won't be satisfied with. Your satisfaction, your happiness is the main thing we really care about. And we're going to even sweeten the deal. With the first 30 people who register, they're going to get a discounted rate of just $97. Guys, that is unheard of. Coaching programs like this sometimes go for several $100s. If you're one of the first 30 people to sign up, you can get it for just $97. So if that sounds interesting to you, just go to our website. The link's going to be in the description, fitforlifeacademy.health/challenge to get signed up. All right. Again, the link is going to be in the description of this episode. Just go ahead and check that out. And with that said, let's go ahead and get right into the episode. And let's start off by talking about what are the main differences between cutting and bulking. And you guys probably already know what the main differences are, but I do think it's important to take a couple of minutes here to set the stage and make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what do I mean when I use the word cutting, what do I mean when I use the word bulking, okay? Cutting, by definition, is when we try to lose weight and get leaner. Right? When most people say they're going to go in a cutting phase, they're trying to reduce body fat while maintaining muscle mass so that they can look leaner, more athletic, fitter, more muscular, right? So it's not just about losing weight, it's about losing body fat specifically and maintaining or even gaining as much muscle mass as possible. So that's what we're referring to when we use the word cutting, right? The primary goal of cutting is to reduce body fat. And the primary goal of bulking is to build muscle. Now, you can definitely maintain all your muscle, and depending on a couple of things, you might even be able to build a little bit of muscle during a cutting phase. By the way, I have a podcast episode called How to Build Muscle and Lose Fat at the Same Time. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and check that out. But bulking is the most effective way to maximize, right, or optimize muscle growth. Because if you eat more food, if you have more calories, your body can allocate those additional calories towards muscle growth. Simple and straightforward, right? It's like if you're trying to build a house with limited cement, limited blocks, limited materials, you're not going to be able to build the biggest house, right? You might be able to build a slightly smaller house, but not the biggest house. And the building materials here are analogous to food, right? Food essentially is the building blocks that we use to build additional muscle. So if we eat more food, we build more muscle, but we also gain weight. And it's never exclusively 100% muscle mass. It's always a combination of some muscle and some body fat, right? So hopefully we're clear there in terms of the differences between cutting and bulking. Cutting, primary goal is losing body fat, getting leaner. The primary goal is not building muscle. And during a bulking phase, the primary goal is building muscle, not getting leaner, because you will gain some body fat as well. Now, which should you choose? Should you cut or should you bulk? And I pose this question in that way because this is something that I'm asked frequently from clients at Fit for Life Academy, like, hey, what's next? Should I cut? Should I bulk? What should I do? And oftentimes people think like that there are these objective metrics that they should look for to determine whether they should cut or bulk. And the truth is that it's completely subjective, right? It depends on what your goals are. Where you are right now, what do you want to work toward? Do you want to get a little bit leaner, or do you want to build muscle, right? And again, if you're relatively new to lifting, if you're optimizing certain things, you can build some muscle, lose some body fat simultaneously. But which of those two do you want to optimize? And the answer to that question will tell you whether or not you should cut or you should bulk. Now, you might be thinking like, I don't really know which direction I should be going in, which is why I clicked on this episode, Dr. Joey, give me the answer. Okay, I'm going to do my best. What I want to go into here is talking about some specific considerations that you should consider to help you choose whether you should cut or bulk. Let's talk about cutting first, all right? I think the first thing to consider when it comes to cutting is, why do you want to cut in the first place? Is it mainly for aesthetic reasons? Is it for health-related reasons? Is it because you have an event coming up, like a wedding, and you want to look your best? I think it's really important to get clear on the reason why you want to cut before going into a cutting phase. Why? Because you're going to have to make some changes to your lifestyle, right? You're going to have to eat less calories. You might have to be a little bit more active. You may have to say no to some social situations. You have to straighten things up, right? You have to be stricter than you currently are if you're going to go through a cutting phase. And that's why I think it's really important to be clear on why do you want to cut in the first place? And then think about whether those changes are actually worth it given your priorities and your lifestyle. For example, if your goals are just aesthetic based, but you don't have that much body fat to lose already and you're in a decent shape, well, maybe those changes aren't necessarily worth it, right? Like what does getting leaner do for your overall life satisfaction, for your happiness? You might realize it doesn't actually add that much. And you might realize it's not the right goal for you at that given time. Now, if you're overweight and you have excess body fat and your amounts of body fat are negatively impacting your health, well, hey, going through a cutting phase, improving your health, that might actually be worth it, right? If you have a wedding coming up and you want to get leaner and you want to look your best for pictures, special events like that could be extremely motivating. And it's only for a certain period of time. That might be worth it, right? So I think it's really important to start by getting clear on why do you want to cut in the first place? And I say this because I've had experiences with clients where they say they want to cut and then they have a hard time doing so. And then we have a conversation about it and we come to the conclusion that like the changes they need to make to get leaner just like are not worth it for them, right? I worked with this one client. I've talked about this story a couple of times. He was in great shape already, but he didn't have a six-pack. He wanted to get a little bit leaner to have a six-pack. But he went out to dinner with his wife like once a week and didn't think about what he was ordering. He went out with his kids 2 or 3 times a week. just to grab lunch or a quick dinner after taking them to their sporting events. And again, he just wanted to enjoy food with them, have some drinks, and not worry about the foods that he's consuming. And then he was busy. He was a busy professional and didn't have time to dedicate hours to fitness every week. He was getting about 3 training sessions in per week, and he wasn't getting a ton of steps in either. And I talked to him openly about this. I was like, hey man, like if you want to achieve this goal of getting a 6-pack, you have to change this, and this about your lifestyle. Do you really want to give up date night with your wife and eat out less with your kids just to have a 6-pack? And he was like, no, you're right. Like those things are not worth it. And then he realized that that's not the right goal for him, right? That's why I start this conversation by being clear on why you want to cut in the first place and making sure it's just worth it, right? The next thing to consider is like, is it the right time? What are your priorities at the moment? Because understand that life is seasonal, right? For example, right now in my life, my son's 2.5. We just had our daughter. She's 3 weeks old. Work is extremely stressful right now. I'm putting in a ton of hours. On top of that, I go to the gym 4 times a week and I lift for about an hour and a half to 2 hours because that's what I love doing. That's how I spend my time. I'm not sleeping the best. I don't have a ton of time to do stuff outside of what I'm already doing. And just like right now, even though I would like to be a little bit leaner, it's just not the right time. I'm not saying that I might not focus on getting a little bit leaner 6 months down the road. It's just that right now is not the right time. And with the holidays and all of this stuff, like, it might not be the right time right now for you. Maybe January is the right time, or maybe February is the right time. But consider timing, consider priorities, consider what's going on in your life right now so that you actually set yourself up for success, right? Because timing is incredibly important as well. Now, another thing to consider that oftentimes people don't consider is, do you have enough muscle to cut? And this goes down more to the aesthetic piece of goal setting. Like if your goal is just to look good, to be in the best shape possible, you want to be lean and muscular, well, the first question to ask is, do you even have enough muscle to cut? Because I've experienced this working with clients frequently as well, where they feel like what they need to do is lose body fat to get leaner and look more muscular. And sure, that is an aspect of it if you have some excess body fat. But if you do not have sufficient muscle, you're just going to lose fat and look like a smaller version of yourself because you haven't spent a lot of time building muscle, right? And this point really mainly targets people who are newer to lifting or maybe haven't been lifting regularly, or perhaps are detrained and have lost some muscle mass, because it takes a long time to build muscle, guys. And if you are a newer lifter, if you don't have a ton of body fat, let's say like, sure, you don't have visible abs and you don't have much muscle definition, but you're not overweight by any means, cutting, like strictly cutting, probably isn't the right goal. You probably just want to stay at maintenance for some time, maybe 6 to 9 months, really focus on your lifting, maintain your body weight, and your body composition will improve significantly just by staying at the same body weight, simply because you don't have a ton of muscle mass. And if that person were to go into a strict cutting phase, let's say they lose 20, 25 pounds of body fat, they get substantially leaner, they're not going to look much more muscular, right? Because again, the excess food, at least being at maintenance, is very beneficial for muscle growth. So if you don't have a ton of muscle and you're not overweight, like you don't have excess adiposity, excess body fat, cutting may not be the right choice for you, okay? So to recap that, I think the main considerations to think about when it comes to cutting is, why do you want to cut in the first place, right? What are your goals? Aesthetic goals, health-based goals? Do you have a target like for an event that you want to get a little bit leaner for? Think about whether those changes that you have to make, right? Like visualize, hey, if I'm going to get leaner, these are the things that I'm going to change about my lifestyle. Think about whether those changes are actually worth it to you. I think it's important to do that visualization exercise. Then really consider whether or not it's the right time, because life is seasonal. Sometimes you're busier, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you do have more time to focus on your nutrition and your exercise, and that would be a good time to focus on cutting. And then lastly, do you actually have enough muscle to cut? If your goal is to look as lean and jacked as possible, do you have enough muscle to cut? Because if you don't, then cutting probably isn't the first thing that you should focus on. Now let's talk about some specific consideration if you're choosing to bulk. First and foremost, these are the things that I want you to consider, okay? One is, are you lean enough to bulk, right? The opposite of that was for cutting, like, do you have enough muscle to cut? Now, the opposite for bulking is like, are you lean enough to bulk? Because when you go in a bulking phase, you should be in a bulking phase for at least 9 to 12 months. Why? Because building muscle is a slow process. you're not going to build muscle overnight. And I see this often where people think that if they just eat as much as possible and they train, they can get jacked in 3 months. Guys, it is impossible. There's a couple of things here that I want to consider or that I want to talk about. So first and foremost, are you lean enough to bulk? Do you feel comfortable putting on additional weight? Do you feel comfortable putting on 15 to 20 pounds over the next year or so? If the answer is no, then you should not go into the bulking phase because you're just going to end early. And if you end early, you just go into the cycle of bulking for a couple of months, putting on too much body fat, getting uncomfortable, losing the body fat, now starting at square one and doing that cycle over and over again and not seeing real transformation in your physique. The most progress I ever saw in my physique was the year before I had my son, all the way until he was 6 months old. So I bulked for a year and a half. I went from about 208 or so body weight, 208 pounds, all the way up to about 228 to 230 pounds. So I put on a little bit over 20 pounds in a year and a half. I put on a crazy amount of muscle. I was super strong. I was feeling great. Training was going really well. But I did it in a very slow and controlled fashion. Okay, so first thing to ask yourself is, do I feel comfortable putting on body weight? Am I okay being in a bulk for at least 9 to 12 months? If the answer is no, don't go into bulk. Maybe lose a little bit of body fat first, because you do want to do a bulking phase for at least that long so you see considerable changes in muscle mass. Another thing to consider is how effective is your training, right? This goes down to timing as well, because sometimes you don't have time to dedicate as much time to the gym, right? And the truth is that if you're going to be eating more food because you want to optimize muscle growth, you should be training as hard as possible. You should be recovering as ideally as possible. You should be sleeping at least 8 hours. You shouldn't be super stressed. And some of these things are out of your control. Like if you have kids or you have a stressful job, like sometimes these things are out of your control. But think about how effective is your training? Am I actually pushing myself in the gym? Is my workout program evidence-based? Is it a good workout program? Do I know how to train with the appropriate intensity, with the appropriate range of motion, with the appropriate technique? Because again, these things probably are more important for somebody who's just starting off. But if you're not doing these things optimally, well, then you're not going to have the best stimulus for muscle growth and you're not going to get the best results from your bulking phase either. So it's probably better to learn those things before you decide to go into a bulking phase, right? So those are the main considerations. Do you feel comfortable putting on weight? Are you lean enough to start a bulk? And by the way, lean enough is completely subjective, right? Lean enough simply means do you feel comfortable putting on weight? You might have, some people don't feel as comfortable as others putting on weight. Like some people might put on 10 pounds and not want to put on any more weight. Other people might be more flexible in the way they feel about putting on weight and they're okay with putting on another 20 pounds or so, right? So lean enough is just based off your personal preferences, right? So it's not like, hey, you have to be 10% body fat, because I know that's probably what you're thinking. There's no objective number or there's no objective quantity of body fat that you have to get to before bulking. It just comes down to personal preference and how comfortable you are going to a gaining phase for 9 to 12 months. Think about whether or not your training is as effective as possible as well. I would say those are the main considerations to think about before deciding that you're going to bulk. Now, let me give you guys some tips to make your cutting phase or bulking phase as successful as possible. When it comes to cutting, the first thing I'm going to recommend is to pick a start and an end date. It is so easy to lose motivation and fall off a cut. I've done this so many times where I say, I'm going to get cut, I'm going to cut, and I'm going to get a little bit leaner. And I don't decide what the end is, 12 weeks from now or 16 weeks from now, or when I hit this ideal weight. And what happens every single time is I'll lose about 5 to 10 pounds. And then I'm like, I'm done with the cutting stuff because I don't want to do it anymore, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I think picking a start and an end date and being objective about what that end looks like. So, hey, if I weigh 220 pounds, it means I'm going to get down to 210, and that's going to take me 8 weeks, which is this specific date, right? So be intentional about that. I would also recommend doing a cut as slowly and controlled as you can. When I say slowly, I don't mean lose 0.1 pounds a week or anything like that, because that is ridiculous and you're just going to lose motivation. But losing half a pound to a pound a week on average is a really good rate of progress. And I recommend doing it slowly because when you do it slowly, 1, you don't starve yourself, so you don't feel as miserable. 2, since you're eating sufficiently, you're going to feel more energized. You're going to have enough food to recover from training. You're still going to be able to push yourself from your training. So the improvements in body composition will look better if you cut slowly Then if you cut really quickly and you have no energy to train, you're not recovering well, your performance suffers, you feel hungry, it's just not good. It's miserable, right? So do it slow and controlled. Don't be in a rush so that your training is still effective, because we know that training is the stimulus to improve body composition. So you still really do need to prioritize your training, right? And the last tip I'm going to give you here, if you're going to go into a cut, is to not just focus on calories. Yes, you need to be in a calorie deficit. Yes, you should track your calories. Yes, you have to reduce your caloric intake. But don't just focus on calories and eat whatever the hell you want. Focus on healthy food choices, right? Diet quality matters, guys, and it matters more when you have less food available, right? So make sure you're hitting your protein targets. Make sure you're eating fruits and veggies. Make sure you're getting your micronutrients from a wide array of different fruits and veggies, things like beans, nuts, seeds. Like, eat whole foods. Have a healthy diet, because that will help you have better results. And it's going to help with hunger regulation as well, because when you cut, you're inherently going to feel hungry. It's hard to stick to something if you feel hungry all the time, right? You're going to feel tempted to quote unquote cheat on your diet more frequently, right? So those are the main 3 tips that I would give you for a successful cut. Make sure you pick a start and an end date and really define what does the end of your cut look like. Do it in a slow and controlled fashion so you get better results and you can still prioritize your training. And do not just focus on calories, okay? Make sure you have a high quality diet. And one other thing I would actually add here is stay active outside the gym. Have a daily step goal. Being physically active helps you eat more food. Seriously, right? Whenever I go on a cut, I actually don't change up my diet all that much. I'm just more active. I'm more intentional about my steps. I schedule walks. And this is why I say like timing matters as well, because you need to have the time to be actually able to do those things, right? So those are the main tips there for a successful cut. Now let's talk about some tips for a successful bulk. So I said for a cut that you should do it in a slow and controlled fashion. For a bulk, you should do it even slower. The slower you can gain weight, the better. Why? Because there's really good science showing that eating more food does not result in more muscle growth. Meaning that you just need to be in a slight surplus to optimize muscle growth, right? So if I'm at maintenance, let's say my maintenance calories are like 2,500. If I'm at like 2,700 calories or 2,800 calories, that's just a little bit above maintenance. 200 calories above maintenance is plenty to really optimize muscle growth. And if you eat 500 calories above maintenance, or even more than that, which people do when they go on a dirty bulk and eat everything they can, that they lay their eyes on, you don't actually gain any more muscle. Not a single ounce. Right? Maybe a small, tiny, microscopic amount, but nothing that's going to be visually, like that, nothing that you're going to be able to pick up visually, right? So I don't recommend bulking too quickly, because you just essentially are feeding your ego. Yes, it feels good, but you're essentially just having an excuse to eat like crap and put on excess body fat. And then you're going to end your bulk early because you're going to put on way more weight than you actually want to. And you're not going to put on that much muscle mass, and you're just going to go into this endless cycle that's not very healthy, right? So the slower, the better. I tend to recommend aiming between 1 to 2 pounds of body weight gain a month at most. So much slower than the rate of weight loss during a cut, right? Do your bulk for at least 9 to 12 months, ideally longer if possible. If you're a beginner, if you're a younger person, you can probably get away with doing this for even longer. And the longer, the better. Like the more you can be in this anabolic state, the more muscle you're going to grow, the more your body composition will improve. And the last tip, which is the same tip I gave during the cut, and actually I'm going to add a 4th tip that just came to mind. But the last tip is to still prioritize a healthy diet, right? Like again, eating healthy is important, especially if you're trying to do a bulk slowly and controlled. Because most times when people are intentionally gaining weight, they let their diet go to shit. They have McDonald's 3 or 4 times a week because it's easy calories. They're having milkshakes here and there. They're drinking their calories, and they gain a ton of body fat, right? So make sure you still prioritize having a healthy diet. And the last tip is to bust your ass training. Seriously. If you have more food, you can recover better, you can handle more volume, you can progress quicker. Make sure you're training as hard as freaking possible if you're trying to optimize muscle growth. Again, training is the stimulus. Without hard training, you won't be building much muscle. So you really do need to prioritize that. So to recap tips here, slow bulk, the slower the better, 1 to 2 pounds a month. Do it for at least 9 to 12 months. Prioritize having a healthy diet, and train as hard as freakingly possible, because it's really important. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here, guys, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about maintenance, okay? Because you do not always have to be cutting or bulking. I used to think this. I would finish a cut. All right, what are you doing next? Let's bulk. You go into bulk. What are we doing now? We're cutting and going back and forth, back and forth. And that's fun. And if you like doing that, there's nothing wrong with it. But just know that you don't always have to be cutting or bulking. Okay? First and foremost, if you're pretty happy with where your body is from a body fat percentage standpoint, and you don't want to intentionally have to diet and then eat more food and all that stuff, you don't have to bulk. You can just maintain your body weight. You can stay at maintenance and your body composition will improve if you're sleeping well, you're recovering, you're training hard, right? Also, think about what your main focus is or your main goal. This goes back to the considerations that I talked about if you're choosing to cut. It's like, what are your goals? Do you have health-focused goals? Do you have aesthetic-based goals? I feel like the older I get, the more my goals are health-focused, right? I've talked about this openly on social media before. I used to be super ripped, have a six-pack. I don't have a six-pack anymore, even though I'm pretty lean. And I don't want to cut. I don't want to get any leaner because that's not my goal. My goal is just to be healthy, to feel good, to move well, to train well, to eat the foods that I like, to enjoy time with family, right? And those things that I just mentioned don't align with like being in a cut, right? They don't align a ton either with like being in a bulk because I don't want to put on more body fat either. And then if I put on more body fat, I have to lose it, right? So like if you're pretty happy with where you are, you enjoy training, you just want to be healthy, you want to feel good, you don't have to cut or bulk, right? You can spend time at maintenance. And even if you do choose to cut and bulk, I recommend spending some time at maintenance between those phases as well to get used to the results that you just achieved. Like if you cut and lose 20 pounds and now you're super lean and you look great, enjoy that. Stay at maintenance. Stay there for however long you want, 3, 4, 6 months. Same with a bulk. Like you don't have to gain 20 pounds and immediately start losing weight, right? You can gain weight over a year, year and a half, and then stay at maintenance for a period of time. Milk the additional weight that you have and continue to make progress at that higher weight. Spend some time at maintenance. I think it's super helpful. Okay. The other thing I was going to talk about is like, what season of life are you in? Again, when life gets busy, it's harder to prioritize your fitness goals. So it probably just makes more sense to stay at maintenance. Like myself right now, with everything I got going on, I just eat the way that I normally eat. I eat pretty healthy. I maintain my body weight pretty stably at around 212 to 215. Again, I mentioned that when I cut, I got down to 208. Sometimes I get down to 205. That's when I'm really lean. And I've gotten as high as 228 to 230. So where I chill, like without being super fixated on what I eat, is right, not in the middle, like a little bit on the lower end, but 212 to 215, 5 to 10 pounds above my cutting weight. And I can stay here pretty comfortably. I'm lean. I feel comfortable taking my shirt off. I feel good in the gym. I'm not hungry all the time. And that aligns with the season of life that I'm in right now, where my main priorities are business, family, taking care of my kids, and fitness just contributes to those things. Okay. And the last thing I would consider is like, do you like having flexibility with your nutrition? Again, if you're not cutting, you can be more flexible with your nutrition. You can go out to eat more frequently. You can have some drinks here and there. Not saying that those things are healthy or that you should or shouldn't do those things, but it just, again, depends on what your priorities are and how you want to live your lifestyle. All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully, this episode gave you some clarity in terms of what you should be focusing on, whether you should cut, whether you should bulk. If you're going to choose one of those, hopefully the tips I shared are extremely helpful, and then also helps you think about maintenance and whether that might actually be the right goal for you. If you guys have any questions, by the way, feel free to message me on IG anytime. If I don't answer, I'm sorry. I get a lot of DMs. But if you're not part of our Facebook group, join our Facebook group. It's down in the description. I'm active on there. I'll answer your questions on there. If I don't answer them, my team will answer them as well. Super cool place to be at. And again, if you want to make 2025 your best year yet, you're looking to lose body fat, get a little bit leaner, build some muscle, improve your health, feel a little bit better in your own skin, then I'd really, really, really highly recommend joining our Shred the New Year 21-day challenge. Why? Because it's just, honestly, I'm not saying this to brag, but I do think we have the absolute best coaching service out there. We have spent so much time building this. We have so much experience. All of our team members have master's and PhD level education. We've all have been coaching for over 5 years. We all have incredible success rate with our clients. You can see our testimonials on our website. And again, there's no risk. We'll give you all your money back if after the 21 days you hated it. Which again, I'm confident will not happen. And if you jump on it now, you'll get a discounted rate before those first 30 spots fill up. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, I just want to say thank you for listening to the whole thing. If you're a regular listener, as always, I would really appreciate if you take a second to rate the podcast and leave a review. It helps me a ton. If you haven't already, just take a second to do that, please. It does really help me out. And I will catch you on next week's episode. Peace.